You actually touched really heavily on some of the things we wanted to ask you when you were speaking with Doug. But we wanted to start by saying that we know for you now that being politically active and informed seems like a very important value to you and your family. And has that always been true for you? Is that something that you really instilled in your sons growing up and that they took with them?
No, not at all, really. We are very private people. Up until now, we have been, as any ordinary citizen would be in privacy. We value our privacy, we value our safety. We are not too much into political noise and or wanting to be in the political mainstream, not at all. But as citizens, we have voted, we have registered wherever we have gone to vote, and we have spoken within our family. This candidate is talking this or saying this. So, but only to that extent. More savvy of the what is taking place on the streets, and they say, well, when people speak at such forums, there's lots of criticism. People sometimes deliberately misrepresent things about them, information about them, and we want to make sure that you're mentally, what they were doing by saying this, preparing us mentally that you will receive criticism, you will receive hate mail, you will receive good mail, but there will be lots of criticism as well, and which really has happened. We have received thousands of good letters, and there are half a dozen or so very bad letters. But this is how we tell bad letters. From distance, we can tell these are bad letters. So from there, you can tell without reading much. Bad letters have no sender's address. So when we see an envelope without sender's address, we take caution. In opening it, it could be anything in there. So we take caution. Second thing, when we open it, we definitely want to see what is in it. Somebody may have just forgotten to put their address. Inside, when we see no name at the bottom of the letter, that is definitely not worth reading. So we just put it aside. We have saved those letters as well, and some of the bad messages as well, some of the bad voicemail as well. And that is for our protection purpose, for the reason that we have been advised by the authorities that if something of that nature comes, don't throw it away, save it. God forbid something bad happens, something harmful comes your way, then we will at least know where to go, where not to go, and what to include and all that. For such purpose, we have saved those as well. But if you came over home, you will see piles and piles of wonderful sentiments expressed. There is a 26-page letter written to us by a retired Second World War U.S. Army nurse. Yeah. She writes, she said, I've been witness to the political rhetoric in Germany that took place, and I'm about to make a very profound statement. And she said, if you would listen to those speeches and if you listen to these speeches now, you will see so many similarities, nationalism, excluding this minority, that minority. Minorities are bad. They're not part of our country. They have invaded. They have. And then she went one more step forward. Later on, she copied those speeches, their text, and she copied today's speeches and the text. And she said, here, read them. Read Second World War speeches first, and read the current speeches. Amazingly, and I implore our leaders like you both to look into that. That will tell you that such divisions are not happening first time. These divisions have taken place long ago as well. And if not addressed properly by leaders like you, these divisions could result in worse, not only for our country, for my nation, for
our nation, but for the rest of the world as well. So we just have to be cognizant of it so we can continue to take precaution.
On that note, I know you mentioned that personally you've had pretty positive experiences in inclusivity, and I was just wondering if you recall or if you know about, while your son's time at UVA, if he ever struggled or had a difficult time with ever perhaps feeling excluded, or if there was something wrong because of his religious identification, or...
Believe me, he may have, we are not aware of it, but his experiences, we are witness to some of those experiences. He lived at one of the dormitories, which is quite exclusive. I'm forgetting the name of it, up on the hill.
Ulsterby?
No.
Hereford?
Hereford. Mm-hmm. Hereford was his place of residence. On the street side of Hereford, there is a little basketball court, and he used to play basketball there. And there would come African American students, and they would play with one another. There would come other students. They would play away from them and separately. So one day he decided that, because he told us later on that he got tired of these folks not playing with them and them not playing together. So he decided to have a match. He told both groups, we're going to have a match. And they were all ready to go for the match. But he said, not like this. We want to take one player, one captain from this team and one captain from this team. The condition is that you will select one player from here, one player from there. What he wanted to do, he wanted to integrate both groups so that they will play as separate teams, but integrated, and they will play together. And that is how first match was played. Thereafter, they all begin to talk to one another and play with one another. Many years later, after his passing, we received a group of former students of University of Virginia that came to visit us, and they confirmed that they were the part of those two teams. And since then, they have made this integration, working with one another, respecting equally one another, part of their life, and in their life they have practiced that and are very successful in doing so. So they learned it at Hereford.
That's such a honestly wonderful story to know. For delicately phrase this, we've had a few instances on grounds recently of hateful speech or vandalism towards Muslim students, towards Black students,
and Jewish students as well.
And we want to know if that's something that surprises you about the UVA community, that this happened, or the broader.
Yeah, it is. It is surprising in a sense that that is not what the values of University of Virginia are, or the values of this country are. We may have disagreement of opinion. That is a very good thing. Disagreement, political opinion or other opinions, and which should be expressed honestly and passionately, but not to the level of hatred, not to the level of what I have read and what I have heard on grounds. This institution is worthy of better, because this institution gives us such a positive lesson in life, and so it's amazing that some will display such un-UVA values, such un-American value, because I don't hesitate to call hatred and this type of behavior an un-American behavior. That is not what America is all about. We are all, in the eyes of our Creator and in the eyes of our country, we are all equal citizens, and regardless of race, gender, or our preferences, or what our heritage is. Therefore, display of this, I use only one word the words that I use when I receive that kind of letter and all that, it's cowardice. These are coward people that behave this way. A person with any moral standing would not behave, would disagree, would say to you, I disagree with you on this. This is my perspective, this is my point of view, and I am standing firm on my point of view. But defacing with ugliness, defacing walls of this sacred institution is un-UVA, un-American. It's nothing but cowardice. And it speaks volume. When somebody does this and runs away, they have defined it. They have defined the ugliness of the whatever is written on the wall, that it is out of being coward, being un-UVA, being un-American.
So you've said un-UVA a lot, and you mentioned earlier that your son learned values at UVA that you hold very dear. What are the values that you felt UVA instilled upon him? What ways did you see him grow and change as a college student here specifically?
It's a tradition of ROTC that before graduating, you write something that sums up your experience at ROTC or at University of Virginia. And this is what he wrote, and I have memorized it word by word. It hangs. There is a conference room that is named after Captain Humayun Khan at Army ROTC. If you go there, you will see that written, and every cadet is asked to read that statement. And that is what this institution, University of Virginia, taught him. ROTC affirmed it, and this is what it says. There is a whole paragraph, but I'll recite only one line of it. And it says, soldiers don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And life is about caring for others. We gave a high school graduate to this institution, to this university. Rest of him was made right here, under the roof and the four walls of the classrooms and faculty and the students and the environment and the values and all that, all learned here. So whatever he displayed later on in care of others, that came from the values of this institution.
We would be remiss about talking about those values if we didn't talk about Thomas Jefferson a little bit. Something that you have talked about, made your platform in support of the candidate you're supporting, is this belief in religious freedom. And Jefferson was the author of the Statute of Religious Freedom. Before you were put into this national spotlight, were those writings significant to you? Was it something you talked about with your son? Was it important to you that he went to Jefferson's school?
This is our first exposure to Thomas Jefferson's writing in United States. I have read about him and the history a little bit, but after coming here, we wanted to see Washington, D.C., so we went monuments to monuments, as people do when they come. They're curious to discover Washington, the White House, and the Supreme Court, and Lincoln Memorial, and Washington Monument, and then Jefferson Memorial. So we entered Jefferson Memorial, and these two kids are with us, Captain Humayun Khan and his elder brother Shahryar. They are about 4 or 5 years old by then. And we go there and we begin to read what is inscribed on the walls of the rotunda up there, Jefferson Memorial. And we stand there in awe how familiar those concepts were, how wonderfully universal those writings applied. So whenever the guests would come to visit us from overseas or even from United States, they wanted to see Washington. Take us to, because you live close by, so take us to see Washington. So we would take them. We will give them a car tour, meaning this is Supreme Court, this is National Monument. But then we will go and we will park at Jefferson Memorial and we will walk them up into the dome, under the dome, and we will ask them to read. And they will be awe-stricken as well. So these children were noticing, how fascinated we were as their parents. And Then came the role of books that interested us. We would bring a book at home, and it'll be about history of United States or something of that sort, and they would be very curious. They'll flip the pages and read, and sometimes just browse through. So that's how they got to know Thomas Jefferson. As I mentioned earlier, my love affair with the U.S. Constitution and U.S. history started very, very early when I was undergraduate student. In political science class, I took a course that was a comparative study of world constitutions, and U.S. Constitution was part of that. So when I read the Declaration of Independence, just that, I still haven't gotten to the Constitution, just the Declaration of Independence. I was just so amazed and felt so connected with the history, with the similarity of hardships that this country had gone through, that subcontinent had gone through by the hands of British, and I was just sort of hooked. I felt closer to them than to the Magna Carta or German Constitution or Soviet Constitution. I felt very, and then rest of the things, came as part of life once we moved here, and so children were inspired by those. Sometimes children quietly sit at home and listen to parents talk about things, what are important to them, where they have learned this, and I would share my affection towards these values at home, and we will talk. Ghazala and I will speak in the car going somewhere, and children will be in the back seat and they will be listening, and all. So that kind of sort of may have touched their heart and their mind to be interested. And Humayun was more so than Shahryar. Shahryar was very much into, our eldest son was very much into science and reading science, but Humayun was a little more well-rounded. He would read science, but he would read history and psychology and other things as well. When he was preparing for his admission paper, I saw in his room lots of books about Thomas Jefferson, different stories, different history, and all of that he would read. And so he wrote his essay for admission here. Hereford has a tradition that they grant you admission to live in Hereford based on essay.
Right.
So you have to write an essay. So that essay was a wonderful essay that he wrote. He showed it to me in a draft form and all. And the title of the essay was Freedom Requires Vigilance and Sacrifice. And he based that on Jefferson's concepts and of public service. And so,
Being something you struggle with at all, or that you and your wife?
No, we had conversation with him. First, as I mentioned earlier, that when he wanted to join ROTC, we did have a conversation, and we did tell him that once you become part of a larger organization take over the decision making of your life than you do. So he got into ROTC and training, and then commissioned with eyes opened and full well knowing what lies ahead. But he told us that he feels at that time that these were the best decisions he made. And so we joined him. Were there reservations as parents? Yes, of course. Both Mrs. Khan and I, we felt that him joining will take him places away from us. We are a small family, 5 of us, and we couldn't bear the thought of not seeing our children whenever we wanted to, or whenever we could reach out to them and being closer, and such were our thoughts and desires. But sometime when children grow up, parents of grown-up children have to begin to learn to bear with the separation and bear with the children being away. So we counseled ourselves that we shouldn't be standing in the way of happiness of our children. He felt very happy. He was very content. Every conversation we had with him indicated to us that he was in his element, that he said when he joined ROTC. When he was in Army, he was stationed in Germany, and we would speak with him more frequently. And he would always say that he's enjoying being and doing what he's doing. He would tell us the stories every now and then. He said that somehow, because of my interest in studying psychology undergrad, I have become a counselor to the troubled soldiers. So whenever in the unit there is a troubled soldier, the commanders send them, her or him, to me. And then not only that I have to counsel, but then I have to befriend, and then we have to go eat together, then we have to spend time together and all that. But he said, I enjoyed doing all that. And so.
I must say, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Based on everything we've heard about your son.
That's right.
He would be such a figure to his soldiers.
Yeah.
But along that, after 9/11, did you find that as a Muslim American, or your son as a Muslim American in the military, there was any change in his experience or his feelings, or that really did anything?
Not at all. If it did, he never expressed to us anything negative. And every time we expressed our concern in private conversation, he would say, look, I'm an Army officer. I have a responsibility. I don't worry about the political decision making. We are trained to follow the orders, follow the chain of command, and we follow that, and we look after one another. He said, I would do anything to look after the people that are under my command. And so he did. I don't know whether you have seen Josh Manning's interview on MSNBC. He was present on the day of Captain Humayun Khan passing. Humayun was not supposed to be at the gate at that time, 8 o'clock in the morning. He had finished his duty at midnight, and he was not to come back again up until noon. He came to the gates just to make sure that there is a smooth transition, because 8 o'clock in the morning, scores of local Iraqis would be coming into the camp to do the camp work. And then scores of American soldiers would be leaving after breakfast to do their mission, go on to their mission. So they were all behind the wall, and the Iraqis were at the gate. He goes there to make sure that the transition is smooth and people are moving as should be. So he arrives at the gate, and he drives, and the soldiers under his command ask him, and Josh was one of them. They ask him, why are you up here so early and all this? You know, this is, he said, no, I just want to make sure everything is going smoothly and all that. It's that time that terrorist vehicle is coming very fast, and he could see that vehicle is coming very, very fast, and he must have realized the danger that it posed, because he knew there are scores of U.S. Army soldiers behind the wall, and this vehicle is coming straight towards the wall. And outside there are approximately, they told us, about 300 Iraqis that were local Iraqis that were at the gate. So he tells everybody to hit the ground, and they all do. And he, instead of doing the same, and I still haven't figured it out, why didn't he do that? He raises his hand as if trying to stop this vehicle, and takes about 10 steps towards this vehicle, causing it to prematurely detonate, and it exploded, and that was that. So Josh Manning said, I haven't met him, I hadn't spoken to him before, but on that day on television, at MSNBC, he said that that was not the work of an Army officer, that was the work of a private. He should have ordered a private to stop this vehicle, and the private would have jumped in front of it to stop it and all that, but he didn't do that. He took those 10 steps deliberately, fully knowing the risk himself. And that day, what he learned under the wall of this institution, caring for others, came all together. He showed it to us and to the rest of the world that that is what caring for others mean, that if you have to stand up and face the danger, you do it without hesitation. And they said that the witnesses that were there, they felt no hesitation in his action, in his standing in front of that that terrorist vehicle. So it's all was taught right here. We only brought here, I remember, high school graduate student not knowing which way to go, which way not to go, and all of that. All of the good values of caring for others, service of this country, honor, dignity, all learned right here. And sometimes people ask us, how do we feel when we find ourselves in this flood of lights and flood of all type of political rhetoric, being subjected, sometime good and sometime not so good and all that. We only conclude, Mrs. Khan and I, that we were blessed to have him for 27 years. And in those 27 years, people would think that we may have taught him a thing or two. Not at all. He taught us. He continues to teach us. And it was under his spirit, under his grace, that we continue to stand up again and again and again. You know, for small children or for what it. I was in Washington, D.C., walking from one meeting to another meeting, and a very short lady, from her accent, I could tell she was Hispanic. She held my arm. She said, "Mr. Khan." I looked back. She said, "Oh, I'm so happy to meet you." I said, "Well, I'm happy to meet you too," and all that. I said, "Thank you." I shook her hand, and I wanted to move her. She said, "No, I have to tell you something." So I paused. She said, "I have a 7-year-old son. And she says that whenever he's bullied in his school, he comes back and he watches your speech. And one day he said to me, his mother, "I want you to take this speech to my school." She said, "I gathered myself, and one day I went to his school and told the teacher that my child is being bullied a lot, and can you show this speech to the class?" And teacher saw the benefit of that, and she gathered the whole class, took the permission from the principal and all, and showed the speech to the class. And that child told her mother several days later, she said, "Nobody bullies me anymore." So forget about all the political hoopla and nuisance and all that. If that child was benefited out of all this, just one child, I think this whole exercise is worth. So it is that the values learned within the four walls of this institution and are good values. So when I see this nonsense and cowardice spread on the walls and subjecting each other to these un-American un-UVA values and all. I am saddened to see that how coward these people are, how ignorant they are, that they don't understand the value of being within these walls is such a blessing moment in their lives that they ought to practice those, learn from there, and be the symbol of those values instead of bringing hate from somewhere else and trying to inflict that illness, that narrow-mindedness, that small-mindedness, inflict on the institution by inscribing it on the walls and all. That is just not acceptable.
I actually just was wondering, probably a shorter question, that you always refer to your son as Captain Lion when you speak of him. Is there a particular reason or why you do that?
The world knows him as such. And, sometime it is very difficult to imagine and comprehend that such a good person is not with us. So by these titles and by these names and all, I try to sort of dignify his name. I feel that it was a gift to us as two human beings, Mrs. Khan and I. We were just blessed by this gift for 27 years. It was designed for us to have and then designed for us to say goodbye. But we feel his presence and all. So I wind up, because that was his mission and that was he was very happy. Whenever he would put the uniform on and he would have his formal uniform or informal uniform, he would take wonderful pictures and he would send us and all that. So by calling him Captain Humayun Khan, I am honoring his wishes that he was very proud to be part of the United States Army.
One more question, Doug.
Yeah, please.
Now that you live in Charlottesville and are at UVA all the time, is it hard for you to be at UVA?
No, not at all. It's never hard. Whenever things are a little darker, that's where we come. We come to see the light. We come to see the bright faces and our future leaders that will lead us in a better direction. We come to sit on the bench that is behind, I don't know what is the name of the library, that here is your main library and then there is a small library. Alderman? No. Alderman is your main library.
Right, and then right next to it is...
Right next to that there is, what is the name?
Clemens.
Clemens. Behind Clemens, if you go, there's a beautiful garden, small garden. And there's a beautiful magnolia tree, and under that tree is a bench. And on the bench is inscription of Captain Humayun Khan, which says, from friends of Captain Humayun Khan, whom he honored with his friendship. So some of his friends got together and all that and asked through university and they placed the bench. So coming to the grounds, answering your question is no, not at all. I always bring my friends. We always go and sit on the bench and we are sort of heartened and brightened and to some of my friends, and I want all of you to do that. I'm sure you have done it, but I want you to do that after speaking with me. There is a piece of Berlin Wall in front of Alderman. Go there now. And I always ask, it's a puzzle that I ask my guests when we get to the Berlin Wall piece, in the frame, I asked them to stand up front of it and see all what is on the wall, and then go to the back of it, and it's totally clean, cement, not a mark on it. And then I asked them this question: tell me which side is the western part of the Berlin and which side is the eastern part of Berlin. Some cannot determine, but most people determine that the one where you have lots of graffiti and all of that, freedom, is that side was towards the West Berlin. And the totally clean, not just the cement, was towards the East Berlin, because there was such a restriction to come even close to that wall, you will be shot. So the people who know the history of Berlin Wall would tell you by looking at it that this side, that is all color and paints and this and that and all that, was western side, because people can get that close. They were free to move. They were free to express. Other side, neat and clean, nothing but cement, that's eastern side that you couldn't get close. So those areas are very, very dear to us. Our son, Shahryar, was a resident of the lawn for a year or so. And Rotunda has every year ceremony where Army ROTC's swearing-in ceremony takes place. And where we are headed now, that hall is very dear to us for the last, I think, about 11 years now that we've been going every year. And we stand and we are part of the award ceremony of Captain Humayun Khan Leadership Award. So answering your question in conclusion, that coming to the grounds, being our future leaders, each and every one of you, to us is our future. And so coming there, being there is a very heartening and very positive for us. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan.
Thank you.